Hello everybody. Today's video we're going to be going over how to take herbs during your menses. So first I want to say that there's many kinds of herbal formulas. I will be mentioning a few here, but um, I'm not going to encourage you to rush out and treat yourself because there's many kinds of formulas and there's many kinds of people, and fitting the right formula to the right person does take some training. So I'm going to encourage you to enlist the help of an acupuncturist or an herbalist, a Chinese medical doctor in your area uh, before you start taking herbs during your period. But now that I've said that, let's go over some of the reasons why you may want to be taking herbs during your menstrual cycle or during your menses specifically. So the main reason, probably 90% of the time, it's because of pain, dysmenorrhea. But in my practice, another really large reason is for fertility enhancement. So we're specifically looking for the lining, improvements of the lining of the uterine lining to improve. And by looking at the menses and seeing, you know, if it's clotty, if it looks dark, we can determine that we need to tweak things and make some improvements there. So that is another reason we're going to be taking herbs during the menstrual cycle, as well as starting to move out of the menses and start working on egg quality. So we're actually doing that during the menses too. In addition to those two major reasons, there's also a few other reasons why we might be taking herbs during the menses, and that would be we are either there's too much bleeding, bleeding's too heavy, bleeding is too light. We are trying to treat fibroids or polyps that are either creating fertility issues or they're just of concern. We want to try to shrink them down. We also have other symptoms that could be occurring during the menses, so hot flashes and fatigue, dizziness, could be emotional, could be depression, irritability. Those are other reasons why we might be taking herbs during the period. So the patients who are trying to get pregnant and the patients who are just coming in or taking these herbs to eliminate pain, treat dysmenorrhea, or just to treat fibroids, we're going to be approaching these things a little differently. So the patients who are just coming in for pain, we can be a lot more aggressive with the treatment. However, if patients who are trying to get pregnant also, and they may be having some pain and discomfort, or we just don't like the way the lining is looking from the appearance of the menses. There's plenty of clots. Blood is dark. We can tell there's some micro clots in the lining. We want to treat that, but we also want to be careful because the patient may be possibly pregnant each cycle. We just don't know. So we want to determine, make sure the patient isn't pregnant. So first thing you want to do is determine that you're not pregnant before you start taking those herbs, because those particular herbs that treat pain, move out blood stagnation, those are not the kind of herbs you want to take during pregnancy. So there's a number of ways we can do this. Obviously, you can take a home pregnancy test right when you're expecting your period, just to be sure. If you start to see yourself spotting a little bit, just to double check, make sure there's no pregnancy. That's one way to do it. If you're temperature tracking, you're doing your basal body temperature tracking, you might be seeing seeing where you ovulated about 14 days ago, and now you're seeing your temperature drop. Now, if you see your temperatures drop pretty steeply, it's pretty good indication that you'll be starting your period within 24 hours. And if you're also feeling cramps, feeling those familiar signs of your period starting, it's a pretty good determination that your period's starting. And then, of course, there's that just waiting for that period to start is another conservative way to do it. Just if the period is starting, okay, go ahead, start taking your herbs. Now, if you are just treating the pain and you want to treat the pain most aggressively, and the best way to do it and you're not trying to get pregnant, then starting before the period even starts will give you even more benefit than starting when the pain's already started. So you're kind of getting ahead of the pain. That's because some of these herbs are warming and they're actually helping to start to break down the lining before the period, the cramps start to really get intense. So the cramps don't have to be as hard to force out those clots because they're already breaking down. So that's kind of the idea. So you're kind of medicating, in anticipation of the pain. So that will give you improvement as well. This is also a good strategy for endometriosis as well, which would also be on that list of reasons you'd want to treat during the period as well. If you were able to do some treatment a few days before the period starts, you'll get a lot more relief during the pain. So, and I usually, by dosing in my clinic, I oftentimes have my patients take their herbs during the rest of their cycle twice. And for most general patients coming in, twice a day, it's the most easy for them to do. But for the menses, I will usually ask 3 times a day. And that's specifically because I'm only asking for days 1 to 3, because those are like the main days. So when we're treating for pain, usually the pain is going to start by around day 1 or 2. That's usually the worst days and the heaviest of bleeding. So treating days 1 to 3, taking your herbs 3 times a day is going to give you the best effects for that phase of the cycle. Now, if you are taking the herbs for anemia, or as we call it blood deficiency in Chinese medicine, or fatigue, dizziness, deficiency type symptoms, we might have you be taking the herbs throughout the entire, bleeding time, like if it's 5 or 7 days, depending. So keep in mind that this is all going to be individually tailored to your specific length of your cycle. So if the cycle is really short or really long, we're going to have to be modifying this in some kind of way. So everything in Chinese medicine is kind of based on the individual. So as I was saying before, sometimes, during the period, we kind of switch and we start to work on either the egg quality or the follicle, the follicular phase, because that's already starting to develop as the lining's developing. So we start to switch gears, and by day 4, you'd be starting to take your pre-ovulation herbal formula, whatever it is that you've been prescribed. So you'd be starting to take that from days 4 on until just about till ovulation, whenever that is, whether it's day 11, 12, 13, or a little longer. If it takes you longer to ovulate, we'll have you on that formula longer, but you will be actually starting that during the menses. So starting those herbs early is real important. That's why I like patients to have all their herbs on hand, so they can kind of go from one to the next, and they're not caught like, I have to pick up my herbs. You're off of herbs for a few days before you come in again, and then you have this big gap where you didn't have those herbs. That was a critical time where the follicle was developing. You didn't have herbs for that section of the cycle. So usually we're kind of starting that early, and just kind of helping to influence the early part of the follicular phase, and keeping it up all the way up until ovulation. So what are some really good formulas for taking during the menses? Well, one really good one is Blossom Phase 1 by Evergreen Herbs. This is a really good formula for patients who have mild to moderate menstrual symptoms, bloating, mild discomfort, light cramps, not terribly bad pain, not terribly large clots. It's just kind of a really good formula for just moving the blood, but more gently during the menstrual cycle. A step up from that would be what we call drive out stasis beneath the diaphragm decoction. And in Chinese, it's called Shafu Jiupian. And one of the companies that I buy from calls it Abdostasis Clear. This is a really good all-purpose formula. It's for treating a host of menstrual symptoms. It's got enough strength to treat some pretty bad cramps and break down clots and even treat fibroids, start to break down fibroids. So it's a pretty strong formula, and that's a really good one to take for those first 3 days. For say patients who are say suffering from not from pain but maybe deficiency, they're more tired, they have a very light, short menstrual flow, just a couple days. They need more of a boosting formula, and the basic core formula for boosting would be called the 4-substance decoction, or Subutan. And those are 4 of our main Chinese herbs. This is kind of like a building block formula for what we can take alone or add to other formulas for building blood. And this formula does contain dongui. And I know dongui is probably the herb that's most recognizable, and some patients want to take that by themselves. So that's one you can experiment with, because it does tonify and strengthen the blood and does move the blood too. But like any kind of herb, you do want to be cautious with it. For some patients, it can be a little hard on the digestion if you take it by itself. But it could be one that you might want to explore with if you were taking herbs on your own. Fairly safe. So one of the last things I wanted to say was that if you had been on a luteal phase formula or a PMS formula before your menses started, usually going to want you to stop that before you take your menses herbs. So usually you're going to be kind of moving from one to the other and not overlapping, unless we're specifically doing something and I'm going to be giving you specific instructions for that. So just one last thing to keep in mind. So anyway, I hope you found this video helpful. The menses is probably the most complicated time for herbs, because we're switching around and several different formulas could be starting and stopping. I hope you found this helpful, and please like and subscribe to the channel. And I'm going to be doing another video on ovulation herbs, and that's another time where it can get a little tricky, where we're changing from one formula to another. So keep your eyes open for that. We'll be doing that, and formula for cold herbs, and a bunch of other videos coming soon. So I hope you'll find those interesting as well. So take care and see you at the clinic.